Welcome, Wargamers. This is Doug with 2 Plus Tough, and today we're talking about some elves.
Okay.
That's right, we are diving into the Wanderers section of the General's Handbook 2017. This question was brought to us by this guy, whose name I am not even going to try and pronounce. And if there's a video that you want to see, go ahead and click subscribe, leave it in the comments down below. I read every single comment that's sent to me. You guys have been overwhelmingly supportive these last couple of videos, and it's awesome. I use all of them for inspiration for future videos. Fun fact, Fire Slayers, highly requested more than anything else. But this one was asked first on one of the other videos, so I want to go ahead and give it its due. So without further ado, let's dig in. So the General's Handbook 2017 really gave 3 major faction abilities to the Wanderers, and in order, those are going to be Defiant Hunters, Realm Wanderers, and Melt Away. So let's dig into each one. Defiant Hunters is pretty much a spin-off of the Order one, where units in your army, if they're Wanderers, can reroll failed battle shock tests. Now, you are going to take a lot of troops in this army, a lot of foot soldiers, so that is going to save your bacon more than once. Now, the next ability makes them very much what the Wood Elves used to be like in terms of movement, shenanigans, and things like that, and that's Realm Wanderers. The way this works is, at the beginning of a movement phase, you can pick up a unit if it's within 6 inches of a board edge, and redeploy them somewhere else on that same board edge, as long as they're 9 inches from the enemy. This means if you have a unit that's like on the sides of an edge, like a 6x4, and they're towards the base, you can pick them up and put them way further up close to the enemy. And of course, this counts as their movement for that turn. The only thing that holds this ability back is that you have to come in on the same board edge that you left, and so it kind of reels it in a little bit in terms of, I don't know, it's not like an ambush thing from the Bray Herd, which we'll get to at some point. Really what this is kind of adds to the hit and run aspect of the army and less of the deployment shenanigans, such as like Seraphon can do with their picking up a unit and dropping it somewhere else. And the last one is called Melt Away. This means that units with the Wanderer's keyword can retreat and shoot in the same turn. You got a lot of people with bows and various kinds of missile weapons, I suppose, so this is actually super important. When you stack Melt Away and Realm Wanderers, what you really get is units that can kind of anywhere on the sides, I suppose also the back edge, but who cares, can really not be touched by the enemy unless they really want to be, and even then they still have full shooting effectiveness on those sides. We'll get to why that it might be incredible here in a little bit. Now, as per usual, instead of just you staring at me reading this stuff and I have to chop up the audio to get to kind of move smoothly, I'm going to throw some art up of Wanderers / Wood Elves back in the old edition, and kind of just breeze through some of the command traits and command abilities that you get in the book. Stalker of the Hidden Paths. If a friendly Wanderer unit within 6 inches of the general leaves the battlefield using the Realm Wanderer's battle trait that we talked about earlier, it can return within 6 inches of any board edge, not just the one it left by. Now, this is an incredible command trait. Okay, what it does is obviously it frees up that restriction, limiting you to the board edge you started on. So it does have a lot of uses. The only thing that holds it back is that it has to be within 6 inches of the general, and that unit has to be within 6 inches of the board edge. So what it really means to me is the first, I don't know, say you start the game and you have, your units that are kind of lined up against the back, your table edge, and your general is with them. They can use the ability, launch themselves far forward, even on your opponent's edge, and get into some nasty places. Because here's the thing, as the game goes on, your general is most likely going to move forward, so he won't be near a board edge, so all of a sudden this will lose effectiveness late game. Mistwalker. Enemy units can only attack the general if he's the closest enemy model when the attack is made. Now, this is pretty much a rule stolen straight from Warhammer 40k, and I think it's actually incredible. We're going to have a discussion on tactics here at the end, and I think that this is going to be key to a lot of cool things. Masterful Hunter. Add one of the general's hit rolls for attacks made with a missile weapon. If he doesn't have one, he gets the Hunting Hawk instead, and you can use the Hunting Hawk's beak missile weapon from the Nomad Prince's War Scroll. Not great. It's really not great at all. If you are really just desperate for one more shooting attack, sure, but I don't think it really is effective. Eagle-Eyed. Add 10 inches to the range of any missile weapon used by the general. If he doesn't have a ranged weapon or a missile weapon, they receive a Hunting Hawk instead. So this kind of is the same thing as Masterful Hunter, except this one is more of a range thing rather than +1 to the hit rolls. But if you don't have anything, obviously you still get the Hunting Hawk. If you're familiar with the show Portlandia, this is basically saying put a bird on it. Lord of Blades. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by the general with a melee weapon. This pretty much shows up in some variation on all of the Allegiance abilities. I think it's just kind of a catch-all. I don't think it's terribly effective because you don't have combat like gods in this army. Singer of Spells. Add 1 to the general's casting and unbinding rolls if they are a wizard. If they're not a wizard, they gain the wizard keyword and can attempt to unbind 1 spell in each enemy hero phase as if they were a wizard. Now it's important to note here they put at the end, you cannot attempt to cast anything, you just gain the ability to dispel. If you're going to go for one of the wizards they have in the army, not a bad trait, although I'm going to make an argument for why I think the Nomad Prince should be your general. Okay, so that's all the command traits. As you can see, they're obviously always focused on the general. However, I do think that the first one, allowing troops to re-enter any table edge if they leave with the Realm Wanderer's ability, I think has a lot of uses. If that's a ability that you want to double down on, it's definitely the key choice. What's it called? Mistwalker. I'm going to make an argument here at the end. We'll talk about tactics and strategies, why I think that's probably one of the better ones, because it keeps your general alive theoretically a lot longer. But now what I want to do is transition into the artifacts. And so a lot of those synergies are going to kind of be amplified in that section. And so, like I said before, I'm going to throw some art up and we'll dig in. Falcon of Halthaven. Roll a dice each time an enemy unit moves within 12 inches of this model in their movement phase. On a roll of a 5 or more, the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound. It's not bad. Having something that makes your opponent hesitant to walk towards you, I think, is generally a good thing. I'm not a big fan of artifacts and command traits that have a random aspect, like rolling a die and on a 5-up, so only a third of the time is this ever going to mean anything. Starcaster Longbow. In your shooting phase, you can pick an enemy unit within 20 inches of this model and roll a dice. On a roll of 2 or more, the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound. On a roll of 6 or more, the enemy suffers D3 mortal wounds. I think this is incredible. The fact that it adds a shooting attack, unlike the kind of the crummy birds that you get in the 2 command traits. This is a weapon that means something. It's kind of like, I don't know, Star Soul Mace Light, I guess, for in bow format, and I think that's really cool. We're going to see here in a second that I think that this stacks really well with a synergy that I'm kind of working towards. Splinter Birch Blade. Pick 1 melee weapon this model can use. An enemy unit that makes 1 or more successful save rolls against attacks made by this weapon suffers 1 mortal wound after the damage from the rest of the weapons has been resolved. So basically it's saying pick a weapon. If the guy saves against it, he takes a mortal wound. So it's just adding a little bit of cushioning to your damage potential. Now I don't think you have a lot of, like I said, melee oriented solos that are like, I would love to equip this and use an artifact for this guy. So I'm not seeing it there. If you have something in mind, leave in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. The Wending Wand. Once per battle, a unit returning from the battlefield after using the Realm Wanderer's battle trait can return within 18 inches of the bearer and wholly within 6 inches of any board edge, not just the one it left by. So this one's kind of trippy at first. So if you had a hero on the left side of the board with the Wending Wand and a unit that went into the forest or whatever, the Realm Wanderers thing on the right side, they could go across the entire thing. Right? They can end up on any board edge within 18 inches and within 6 inches of the edge of this guy. So it is another way to get units in weird places. This requires your, hero who's carrying this to be within 18 inches of the board edge because they have to, subsequently come within 6 inches of it. So it has uses. I can kind of see it. I think it's going to be more hassle to finagle it into position than it might be worth. But if you're a skilled player with movement, I can definitely see value in it. Viridescent Shawl. Add 1 to the casting rolls of friendly Wanderer wizards within 9 inches of this model. In addition, subtract 1 from the hit rolls of enemy models that target this model in the shooting phase. This is another one that when I talk about kind of the plans that I'm brewing for my Wanderers in the end, I think it's going to be really, really important. So just keep that in mind, that I think it has uses. Anything that makes kind of the bearer harder to hit, especially when you talk about heroes and stuff like that, I think is really worth taking a note of. And you can get such cheap wizards in this army, 80 points for a Spellweaver. I think it deserves a hard look. And the last one is Forget Me Not. Once per battle at the start of any combat phase, you can pick an enemy hero within 3 inches of this model. That hero may not pile in, attack, or use abilities in the combat phase. Basically, you pick a hero near him, and that guy can't interact with you for 1 turn. one combat phase, actually, I should say. While it is cool, it definitely has some pretty limited uses. I find that most of the time I'm killed by units rather than specifically heroes, and this one only affects heroes, so it kind of depends on what you're facing. Okay, so that is the artifacts. So I want to talk about different things that could make this army, because it might seem kind of random. I know a few people have said, like, I just don't see how this is kind of coming together. What I picture this as being, okay, is I think it's supposed to play like the Wood Elf fluff from 8th edition, 8th edition, where they kind of like go for the throat. Everything's kind of a trap. They lead you into things, and then quick strike. They don't have a lot of, what we would consider traditional strength in terms of like super strong multi-wound models, but they do have a lot of agility, a lot of ranged attacks, things like that, movement shenanigans. So I think they're kind of leading you a trap and then snapping the trap really quickly. Here's the thing. I don't typically look at battalions, just straight up. However, Jack, who's a subscriber on here and a person I know in real life, great guy, he said I need to start trying them because there's a lot of power in them. So the one for the Wanderers is called the Waystone Pathfinders. And it kind of has a very rigid, like, you need to take these things. There's some variants in there. But for the most part, it kind of spells out like, okay, one of the sorceresses, it's not sorcerer, but wizards, Nomad Prince, 3 of the way people, like the ranger type guys, several units, 2 things cav. Kind of gives you a very rigid format of what this thing should be like. But the bonus, the big bonus, is that you can basically, in the hero phase, if anyone's within 12 inches of your general, shoot like it's a shooting phase. Now, this is actually super crazy. Because here's the thing. It's 12-inch is within your general, which means if your general's in the center of the board, he gets 12 inches this way, 12 inches that way. That's a 24-inch radius of death that he can shoot at. Now, when you combine that with, say, the ability to go up and down the left and right sides of the board at will with the Realm Wanderer's ability, and you take, say, 30 Glade Guard, even 20 Glade Guard, and have them zooming up and down, what you're doing is trying to corral your opponent to the center of the board. Glade Guard are no joke, okay? Once per game, they can have a turn where they have, I think it's -3 rend on their shots. It's ridiculous, okay? Like for a little elf dude. So what you can do is harass your opponent towards the center of the board, and then if you have a strong center of, say, Eternal Guard, which are like basically spearmen, but they're actually really good, Spellweavers to recover a lost Glade Guard to guard your general, you can do wondrous things. Because here's the deal. They do their own type of attrition, okay? The Spellweavers have a spell that lets you regain D3 models to a unit, so it doesn't cost you anything in reinforcement points because you're not setting up a new unit. If you take a unit of Eternal Guard, the Spearmen, have them as a bunker in the front, have your general right behind them, and let's see, Sisters of the Thorn, the reindeer rider girls that have a super crazy spell that gives everyone, like, I think it's a plus save, and if someone tries to hit them, they take a mortal wound. There's some mechanic like that. You can create a pretty effective shield wall. Now, this might not seem like much in Age of Sigmar where you can snipe out heroes, but remember, they have a command trait that says you can only shoot your general if he's the closest model. So you bury that model in a bunch of dudes who are tough to kill, dish out mortal wounds. You're shooting magic, you're shooting bows that have -3 rend, at least for a turn. You don't have to do them all at the same time, remember that. And what you do is you have this center mass of Killy moving up the center of the board, remember 24 inches total in circle, and then on the sides you have your ranged attacks coming in and trying to filter them that way. What this gives you is a surprising amount of board presence. I've proxied it once. The real problem that I found is movement is absolutely key to this army. Right, if you move the wrong unit at the wrong time, you get kind of jammed up as your kind of main force of killiness kind of collapses on itself a little bit. I had a great success with Glade Guard in units of 20 on the sides, and so I only own 40 of them, so I just split them in half. Realm Wanderers is phenomenal, but it's not game-changing. What it does is kind of, like I said, your opponent wants to be leery of them, so they kind of go towards the center, and that's where this big wrecking ball of Eternal Guard that replenish their units, that hurt you when you attack them, obviously do damage themselves, they want to get stuck into combat. You have, Nomad Prince there. All these things are shooting. You can't hit him, even if they fly over your Eternal Guard and land in a base-to-base contact with him. They've just put, I'm assuming a solo, because not many people can land an entire unit within that many, that kind of crowded area. That guy's going to die. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of game here. It just is solely dependent on model placement. You have to really assess when you want to use the Glade Guard, super rending a shot during the game to kind of scare your opponent. You have to kind of weigh how close can I get models to my general so that he's never the closest target to somebody else. You need to weigh how can I keep replenishing my shield wall. Should I do Mystic Shield instead? What mathematically makes more sense. You need to think about how you can make this like center mass wrecking ball capture objectives. Don't forget, if you're taking a War Scroll Battalion, you get an additional artifact. Okay, so this is really important because you get 2 of them. So looking over the list of artifacts that we had before, I'm just going to hold my book up right here. The ones that really stand out are the Starcaster Longbow. You give that to, say, your general or something. So now it shoots in the shooting phase. Well, now you're getting basically an additional shooting phase because if someone's near your general, which is now being coated and protected by a bajillion dudes. So that's great. It's a mortal wound each turn, and then if you roll 6, it's D3. That's pretty awesome. I'd say the other strong contender is going to be the Shawl, the Viridescent Shawl, which buffs wizards nearby with +1 to their casting roll, and then makes someone a little bit harder to shoot. I think if putting that, say, on the wizard that you have, the spell, I think it's Spellweaver, Mistweaver, something like that. All the elves have different kind of wizard names. Will give a huge bonus to that bunker that you've created. So Sisters of the Thorn, a unit that is also spellcasters, get a bonus to that. Obviously, whatever wizard you take, and one of them is much harder to hit. When you put it all together, it's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things you have to explain to your opponent, but I really do think there's a lot of game here in harassing from the sides because you have full board control. You don't have to be you are as engaged as you want to be on the sides using the Realm Wanderers, and then also having the larger section of troops moving up the center trying to capture objectives. And if you pretend that bunker of dudes, the Eternal Guard, wizards, your general, maybe some Waste Riders and junk in the center, if you pretend that that's like an arrow tip and point it at the biggest thing on the board and you eliminate that, or whatever the biggest threat to your army is, you can reasonably disarm your opponent turn 2 or 3 between shooting attacks that have -3 rend, targeting the right things, being able to shoot twice a turn with a highly effective shooting army. They're just bows, and they don't have a whole lot of rend, they don't have a whole lot of special stuff, but they're incredibly good. Now I'll say this, I've only tested this once, and it worked pretty well. I still lost, but there were some other factors going on. I just forgot War Scroll stuff, so don't hold me against that. But if you have tried something like that, I want to hear about it. If you are a Wanderers player, I'd love to hear feedback. Leave any suggestions you have for people in the comments below. Whenever someone posts a really intriguing or helpful comment down here, I always pin it to the top so that new people will scroll down and see that first. So I love those kinds of things. It's great community building. So go ahead and do that. If you've tried what I'm trying to do and have had better success, tell me what you did to make it work. And as always, if you want me to cover something, whether it's a lore video or Star Collecting Box review, I think I haven't done any new ones. And then also other Allegiance stuff, click subscribe, leave in the comments down below. Like I said, I read every single comment you guys do. It's incredible and very humbling that you guys spend so much time with me. And I try to respond to as many as possible, but there's a lot. So just have some grace for me on that one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and happy wargaming.